You know that feeling when you're sitting right next to someone you love, and it feels like they're 1,000 miles away? You're in the same room, breathing the same air, and yet there's this invisible wall between you that you can't quite name, can't quite touch, but you feel it every single day. That's not a small thing. That's one of the most painful human experiences there is. And I want you to know something right now. If you're watching this, you're not broken. You're not failing. You're actually one of the rare people who cares enough to do something about it, and that already puts you ahead of almost everyone who just lets the distance grow until it swallows everything whole. Let's talk about what actually happens when connection starts to erode. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not one big argument or one catastrophic moment. It's the thousand small moments that slowly, quietly chip away at the foundation. It's the dinner where both of you are staring at your phones. It's the question that gets answered with one word when it used to spark a 20-minute conversation. It's the good night that used to be a moment and now is just a habit. And what makes this so devastating is that you can see it happening. You're watching it in slow motion, and you feel helpless. The research on this is staggering. Relationship scientists have found that disconnected couples share as little as 8 to 12 minutes of genuine, meaningful conversation per day. 8 minutes. That's less time than it takes to make coffee. And in those 8 minutes, most of what's said is logistical. Who's picking up the groceries? What time is the appointment? Nothing real. Nothing that actually touches the soul of the person sitting across from you. And here's where it gets really painful. The longer the distance goes unchallenged, the more it becomes the new normal. The brain actually adapts to emotional withdrawal. You stop reaching out because you expect to be met with nothing. They stop reaching out because they think you've pulled away. And suddenly you're two people waiting for the other one to cross a gap that neither of you even consciously chose to create. That cycle has destroyed more relationships than any single betrayal ever has. Now, before I go deeper, I need to say something important. There are people right now who are further along in this work than you are. People who found a way through this. And they didn't do it by accident. They found the right framework at the right time, and it changed everything. We have a program linked in the description below, and I want you to consider it seriously, but only if you actually want things to be different. If you're comfortable with how things are, honestly, this probably isn't for you. But if you know something needs to shift and you're done waiting for the other person to magically fix it, that program has helped people move from emotional roommates back to genuine partners faster than they thought was possible. Don't wait until there's nothing left to save. Now let me tell you what the turning point actually looks like, because most people completely misunderstand it. They think rebuilding connection requires a grand gesture, a vacation, a long emotional conversation that clears the air, a declaration. But the couples who successfully rebuild closeness after real distance don't do it through grand gestures. They do it through something so small that most people walk right past it thinking it's too simple to work. They call it a connection ritual, and it is deceptively powerful. A connection ritual is a small, consistent, intentional moment shared between two people that signals to the brain and the heart that we still matter to each other. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be dramatic. In fact, the less dramatic it is, the more sustainable it becomes. And sustainability is everything. Because one good conversation doesn't rebuild trust. 100 small moments do. Here's the science behind why this works. Every time two people share a moment of genuine presence, the brain releases oxytocin, which is the same neurochemical that created the bond in the first place. Over time, these small shared moments literally rewire the emotional circuitry of the relationship. You are not just having nice moments, you are rebuilding the biological architecture of trust from the ground up. Think about the early days of the relationship. What made that time feel so electric, so alive? It wasn't the big things. It was the small things. It was the inside jokes, the random text that said nothing important but meant everything. The way they noticed when something was off with you before you even said a word. You weren't working hard at connection back then. You were simply present, consistently, and that presence built something solid. The ritual is how you get back to that, except this time on purpose. So what does a connection ritual actually look like in real life? It can be as small as 3 specific questions asked at the same time every day. Not how was your day, because that question gets a fine and closes the door, but something that actually invites a real answer. What was the strangest part of your day? What's something you were thinking about that you haven't said out loud yet? What's one moment today that you want to remember? These are not therapy prompts, they're human prompts, and the difference in what comes back to you is extraordinary. Another ritual is what relationship researchers call the 6-second rule. Before you part ways for the day, or when you reunite, you pause for 6 full seconds. Not a peck, not a rushed hug while your mind is already somewhere else. 6 full seconds of presence. Studies show that this single practice, done consistently, maintains a measurable baseline of emotional safety in a relationship. 6 seconds, that's nothing. And yet most people have stopped doing even that. There's also the practice of simply naming something. At the end of the day, one person says something they noticed about the other that day. Not a compliment about appearance. Something deeper. I noticed how patient you were during that phone call. I noticed that you were tired but you still asked how I was. I noticed that you laughed in a way I haven't heard in a while. When someone feels truly seen, something inside them softens, and that softness is the beginning of trust. Let me tell you what happens inside someone when you do this consistently for even 2 weeks. On day 1, they might feel a little awkward. Vulnerability does that. On day 3, they start waiting for the moment. On day 7, they start initiating it themselves. On day 14, the relationship is measurably shifted, not because anything dramatic happened, but because safety was created, day after day, in small and deliberate ways. Safety is the soil that everything grows in. Here's what the couples who've done this work report. They say it feels like finding someone they thought they'd lost, like a door opened that they'd stopped believing was still there. And the beautiful and gutting truth is that the door was never locked from the outside. It was locked from the inside, by distance and habit and the assumption that repair required something they didn't know how to give. But here's the other side of this, because I won't let you walk away with only the good news. This only works if both the intention and the consistency are real. If you do it once and then go back to scrolling through your phone at dinner, nothing changes. If you ask the question but don't actually listen to the answer, the other person feels it and the wall gets thicker. The ritual is not magic. It's a commitment to showing up in a small way every single day. That's it. That's the whole thing. People who struggle the most with this are the ones who want the result without the repetition. They want the trust without the patience. They want the warmth without the willingness to be uncomfortable for a moment. And if that's where you are, I understand. Deeply. Because the pain of distance often creates a kind of emotional exhaustion that makes even small effort feel enormous. That's real. You're not lazy, you're depleted. But here's what's also true. The cost of doing nothing is not neutral. Every day that passes without a small intentional moment is another day the distance calcifies. Another day the other person interprets your silence as indifference. Another day that the story they're telling themselves about where you two stand moves further from the truth you both want. Inaction is not a pause, it's a direction. The couples who make it through distance, who come out the other side genuinely closer than before, they all share one thing. They chose to start. Not when everything felt perfect. Not when they felt ready. Not when the timing was right. They chose to start in the middle of the mess, with the wall still up, with the awkwardness still present, with the uncertainty still loud. They chose to place one small stone in the bridge, and then another, until one day they looked up and realized they'd walked all the way across. That is available to you, fully, right now, not someday, not after one more conversation that clears the air, not after you figure out what to say, now. And if you want to go deeper than what I've shared today, if you want a structured path through this that has helped people navigate distance and disconnection, and come out the other side with relationships that feel more real and more alive than they did before the distance even started, the program in the description below is the next step. I'll be honest with you, not everyone who reads that description actually takes action. Most people will watch this, feel moved, mean to do something, and then let life pull them back into the same patterns by tomorrow morning. I get it, that's human. But if you're the kind of person who knows that this moment is a pivot point, if you can feel that this is not a coincidence that you landed on this video today, then do not let that feeling pass without doing something with it. The window to shift things is always shorter than it feels. Go check the description. Take the next step while you still feel what you're feeling right now, because that feeling is telling you something true.